Hi, my name is Nagusset. For this edition, we're here at the MAMU, an education and employment opportunity for Aboriginal people. We're also going to talk about the missing and murdered Aboriginal women. As well, we're going to feature Norman Achneepineskum, an artist and drummer. And this is Indigenous Power.
MAMU is our Aboriginal Employment Fair. It was founded by the Education and Employability Circle of the Montreal Urban Aboriginal Community Strategy Network. And this is our 5th year. We're very excited, and basically it's a fair to connect employers and job seekers and the Indigenous community. My name is Paige Isaac. I'm Mi'kmaq from Listuguj First Nation, and I'm the coordinator of the First Peoples House at McGill University.
It's going to be a busy day for everyone, and it can be very chaotic. So we're going to share a practice all together to sort of settle our energy, to feel grounded, to feel connected, and most of all, be receptive to all the youth that we're going to meet and encounter.
Well, MAMU means, it's an Innu word meaning together. We selected that word because we want all employers, local native organizations, employment and training provider services to come together and work together to help Aboriginal people to find jobs or going back to school. I'm Dolores André. I'm Innu from Achneepineskum like John, and I'm the coordinator of the Urban Service Center of Montreal for the First Nation Human Resources Commission of Quebec.
I'm looking for a course in cinema.
In cinema, is there anyone here that you applied?
Abitibi-Témiscamingue Commission. My father used to go there when he was young, and it's a good idea to return to this place.
My role at the university is to recruiting students, but I think this event is a very interesting place also for networking. And I had many individuals that came. They asked many questions, mostly regarding the place where we are, the University du Québec, because it's in a region. It's in Abitibi-Témiscamingue.
We're here to try to recruit for our school up north and meet people that could eventually help us in the education of Nunavik children.
Rose Day! Viola Rose Day! Viola, tu te mérites.
What was it like this year trying to organize this amazing event?
A lot of fun, a lot of nervousness, but it was really an amazing experience, and I really learned so much from my team and from the people who were supporting me throughout it, so it's been awesome. It's amazing to see it all come together. My name is Michaela Cartwright. I am Inuit from Montreal, and I am the project officer of MAMU 2015.
The Queen Charlotte's?
MAMU is not only a fair, we also had success stories, we have networking games, we had this activity where it was a bit like speed dating, but it was speed jobbing, and so an awesome opportunity for job seekers and employers to just practice introducing themselves and, you know, getting out there in the workforce.
I just finished university and I'm looking for a job, so I'm handing out my CV. And I'm finding out about what different organizations are looking for.
Are you looking for something in particular?
Yeah, I got a job at McDonald's.
Okay.
And I found lots of things that I wasn't aware of, and so I'm really excited about the possibilities.
We have a little kiosk here because we want to recruit Aboriginal students for this summer. We really want good, qualified Aboriginal post-secondary students from universities or colleges to come and work with us over the summer on, we think, stuff that will be very interesting for them, to be able to work with communities and work on improving the health of people in First Nations and Inuit communities.
Yeah, we met some interesting people. It's definitely good to meet the other Aboriginal people and to see what's out there too. So, yeah.
What were the challenges?
Oh boy, do you have all day? Because the challenges, I would say a lot of the things trying to get people involved and trying to get people on a schedule. People don't like to respond in a timely manner, so that's probably one of the biggest things, but also making sure that everybody's needs are met is a pretty big challenge as well.
This is definitely by far the most successful MAMU that I've been to. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger.
5 years ago, we were very small. At that time, we had only 20 exhibitors that came, and now we had 54.
I'm very happy to see so many employers here. We had to even refuse some employers, just the larger space and a lot of different people here is really great.
I think this is a great event. I think it's one of the only things that they have here for Indigenous students, Indigenous people, and I think it's a good way to recruit people.
So I'm crossing my fingers.
Well, I hope you hire her, but no pressure.
According to some reports, Aboriginal women throughout Canada have gone missing and murdered since 1980.
When people think of missing and murdered Native women, they kind of think of Robert Picton, they think of the terrible deaths at the hands of a serial killer, or they think of kidnappings. They think that because we hear sort of these incredible stories of women suddenly disappearing and leaving no trace.
The RCMP released a report in 2013 that is not reflective of the realities of missing and murdered Aboriginal women and has serious gaps.
When we're looking at numbers, it's just the tip of the iceberg. It doesn't actually do justice to how huge this issue is if you take into account the different types of disappearances and deaths. But we're also talking about family violence and conjugal murders. But we're also talking, a lot of people have brought up suicide because suicide is related to the same causes in terms of what makes Native women unsafe, both in their communities and outside of their communities. Quebec Native women, initially we wanted to try to count how many cases exist in Quebec, but really quickly we realized that that's not actually possible because it would mean having to go to every single community and speak to a number of people and say, has anyone died in your community? How have they died? And that's actually really, really expensive, but also not necessarily a good thing because then you might be triggering a lot of painful memories for people.
There is a long, troubled history between Aboriginal people and the RCMP that dates back hundreds of years, when the RCMP forcibly took Aboriginal children to the residential schools. Native communities have since created their own police corps.
Community members are actually calling their own police corps first, and so they're the first to act, which is good, but it's challenging in communities when someone has to call the police to complain about violence if they're related to the police officer. But we're trying to figure out at Quebec Native Women how we can suggest remedies for this. So the objective is not to bring in the SQ or the RCMP. We want community policing to continue because it means that police officers can take the history of the community, relationships in the community into account and be more adapted in the work that they conduct. But it does mean that people need to feel safe or need to feel like their stories remain confidential and feel like their stories will be addressed.
Since the 1960s, the government implemented Canada-wide measures that allowed social workers to take children from their homes to be fostered or adopted out to non-Native families. This is known as the 60 Scoop and has deeply impacted our communities, leaving Aboriginal people weary of social workers and youth protection.
And of course, most importantly, I would say the issue of fear of losing their children. Because if police have to intervene and there's violence and children are there, they have no choice but to call youth protection. Yeah. And this means that women might actually not call the police, because if they're afraid that youth protection might take their children, it means that they'd rather stay in a violent situation. So one of the things we also need to act on is youth protection, and how can we make youth protection more adapted to Native communities' needs? How can we make sure that the objective is not to keep children in unsafe environments, but to make sure that children can stay in their communities, continue to practice their culture and speak their language.
Multiple organizations, both Native and non-Native, have been demanding an inquiry into the missing and murdered Aboriginal women. The Harper government refuses to launch an official inquiry into this matter.
Action needs to happen on multiple levels at the same time. So while I definitely think that inquiry should absolutely happen already, it's just why has it not happened? Because I think something like that, I think that if the inquiry were to happen with the guidance of Native communities and really guidance and consultation regularly happening with Native communities, that would make it much more effective.
The Women's Memorial March is an annual event held each Valentine's Day throughout Canada. It began in 1992 in Vancouver's downtown east side. Missing Justice has been organizing these marches here in Montreal. The media has suddenly become interested in the subject of missing and murdered Aboriginal women, although the issue has been ongoing for the last 30 years.
One of the things that has been interesting for us is how the media has caught on to the issue of missing and murdered Native women, but are still not paying attention to Indigenous women when they're doing really awesome things, when they're caring for their families or when they're being active politically. Actually, Indigenous women in Quebec, proportionately, there are more elected Native women in communities than there are elected Quebecois women in politics in Quebec. So women are doing all sorts of awesome things in their communities, and they're basically showing up in the media when they're missing or dead. And so when I was a student at UBC in Vancouver, I had a friend who was in journalism who had told me that they have this concept that they studied about how Native women show up in the media for 4 Ds. So when they're dead, drumming, dancing, or drunk.
There are solutions in helping Aboriginal women so that they are not victimized.
Basically, I think there's lots of different solutions, and I think that they can take many different forms. But I don't think that the issue of missing and murdered Native women in Canada is going to just be solved by following a particular formula. I think that the issue is so deeply systemic, the society is so deeply ill, because a society has to be incredibly sick for this issue to have gotten to the point that it has gotten to, as far as I'm concerned. To me, I think that as part of Missing Justice, one of the most important solutions is really education, because when I went through the school system, I didn't get the only Native education or Native history that I received was something about friendly natives and fur traders, and I don't really remember much else. And to me, a lot of the violent attitudes towards Native communities that I've come across, and they're really violent attitudes, it's unbelievable, come from a complete ignorance, just astounding ignorance in most of the population.
How many missing and murdered Aboriginal women are enough?
One missing or murdered Aboriginal woman is too many. And so we don't want to focus on numbers, we want to focus on stories. We want to focus on individuals and families who are experiencing pain. And we need to stop demanding numbers about violence, because violence is not easy to count, and we shouldn't have to count it.
My name is Achneepineskum. My spirit name is Benesia Ke Samaganish Shinina, which basically means Thunderbird Earth Soldier Man. My nation is Ojibwe Cree. My father's Ojibwe. My mother is Cree from James Bay. And I come from the Paypla Indian Reserve in Northern Ontario.
How do you define yourself?
Oh, a long time ago I was a commercial fisherman.
Okay.
And a drum maker. But then I became an artist painter, writing poetry and short stories and doing crafts work, like doing mitts and moccasins and things like that. Became a handyman, electrician. So I've been doing all kinds of things throughout the time I've been in Quebec. But mostly I'm a powwow singer and a painter.
Do you consider yourself a painter first or a drummer-singer?
I consider both of them first, because some days I'm painting and some days I'm drumming, and I like them equally. Like I can't decide or choose what I like more. I just become a painter and I'm not drumming, or I become a drummer when I'm not painting.
But your paintings are so detailed and beautiful. It looks like you had to actually go to art school for that. When did you develop this talent?
A lot of trial and error.
But at what age? What age did you start?
Actually, when I was about 9 or 10 years old, I used to like to draw. I used to draw birds and cars and airplanes and buildings and things like that. And I was playing with paint when I was a child. But it was not until 1995 where I decided to try painting for real. And I just did it as a hobby.
And where do you get your inspiration in terms of the subjects that you paint? Because I know you do very traditional, from what I've seen, you do very traditional types of paintings, whether it's animals or rattles, or where do you get the inspiration?
My native roots, probably. Nature. I like nature. I like painting animals that I grew up seeing.
Okay.
Or inspired by, like buffalo or eagles. And also the traditional objects. It's also part of my singing and drumming that I like to paint drums or rattles or eagle feathers or eagle fans. Je suis the leader to the Buffalo Hat Singers.
Now tell me about drumming and the Buffalo Hat Singers in whichever order you want. When did you start drumming?
I started drumming in 1991 in January.
Okay.
Yeah, back home. At the time, we didn't have any culture back home. Our community is a small community, maybe 80 people. And there was a lot of alcoholism and things like that on the reserve. There was always very a turbulent kind of environment. And because of the ochre crisis in 1990, there was a lot of Native people passing through our community on the Trans-Canada. They would be coming from British Columbia, Alberta, and all those places out west. And they'd be passing through our community, and they would stop by our community center and sleep and have a place to eat and get some donations, and they'd carry on. And with them, they had drums. They would have hand drums. So at the time, we didn't have any of that kind of culture back home. So I used a video camera, and I would videotape these hand drums that you see in the community. And that's how I got the idea to ask my mother and father, could you please help me make these drums, hand drums. At the time, I only wanted one. Like, I didn't think the community would be interested in drumming or singing.
And how did you learn how to sing the songs? Like, who taught you the songs?
Oh, you know, when we first made the first drum, the mother and father, they would make snowshoes, and they would make lacing for snowshoes. They would make toboggans and things like that. So they knew about wood and working with natural material. So when we had the first drum, like, I didn't know anything about drumming, nothing at all, you know. So with the time, certain members of the community were interested in wanting to sing. They said, "What do you got there, Norms?" And a drum. We didn't know we didn't know how to work it. We didn't know what to do with it. We were just like making noise with it. Until two of our friends who were in the community that that would go to powwows would invite people that know about the culture, elders and other singers that would come and teach us some songs.
Wow.
Slowly. In the first 2 months, we only know 2 songs. And we sang them wrong. We played the same 2 songs every day and sang them wrong, but until we would get further instruction, we gradually start to know what to do. The Aboriginal language is important. I speak Ojibwe, but I don't speak Cree. I couldn't have a conversation in Cree. I know words.
Okay.
You know, when I was about 5 years old, the phone rang. And when I was 5, I only knew Ojibwe language.
Okay.
It was my father's language, so we spoke my father's language because we lived in an Ojibwe area.
Mm-hmm.
So the phone rang, and I thought I was a regular person. I thought Ojibwe was the language that everybody spoke.
Okay.
So the phone rang, and on the phone there was a Cree person talking. And all I heard is, I go, Ma, there's an Indian on the phone. You know, like this. So I didn't know I was Indian, right? I thought I was like a regular person. I honestly thought we came across by boat. Yeah.
Across from where?
Because it comes from the religion.
Ah.
Yeah, we were raised as a Catholic family, so
okay.
We thought, well, you know, a long time ago, we must have had these kind of canes or something, and we were sheep, guardians of sheep or something, you know, like in the Bible,
Shepherds?
Right? Shepherds. Yeah. So that's what I thought. It was only until I was 6 years old, and I went to school, that I realized that they didn't understand a word that they were saying. Mm. Then I realized, oh, I am Native. Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on Indigenous Power, and I'm super, super huge fan of you, Norman.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Indigenous Power. Join us next time for more episodes.